just to keep us on track here, we are now at our final segment, which is making the most of your tendencies. So, all of us have preferences for how we operate. And the funny thing is, we tend to believe that the way we operate is the most normal way, and people who behave differently in the workplace are the strange ones. What we have found is that there's a huge variety for how people prefer to collaborate with one another. And through lots and lots of research and, of course, data, right? You're getting the sense that we're geeks now, and it's true. We were able to distill smarter collaboration into 7 different dimensions. And so let me put, these are all laid out in chapter 4. I'm going to go through these super quickly, but we were able to lay out these dimensions, and we developed this very, very quick I think it's under 10 minutes for people to take a self-profile that helps them understand where they come out on each of these different 7 dimensions. So let me pick one of them. Let's pick complex and concrete. It's the second one across here. By answering the series of questions, this profile will generate a report that tells people where they are, and it will give them tips for how to use that tendency in the most productive way possible. So if this were the graph that was spit out for somebody, and it shows that they're pretty far on the complex side of things, it means that they are drawn to the kinds of problems that are abstract or philosophical or theoretical. They love to think about big picture ideas, and they often see connections between different domains that other people don't see. They're quite creative. And the opposite would be people who are concrete thinkers, people who really like to generate action plans. They're very pragmatic. They get down like I'm the rubber hits the road kind of person. Now, what's important to know about this profiling tool is that there's no ideal outcome. That you can't look at this graph and say, oh, that person's going to be brilliant at collaboration, or the opposite. Oh my gosh, I don't want to work with that person. What it tells you is what's your natural tendency. And the people who perform highest, the people who get ahead in their careers, are the people who are realistic and know what their natural disposition is, what their natural tendencies are around collaboration, and they know how to work with people who are really different from them. So on that complex concrete dimension, imagine this person, they love the big picture. Are they somebody who gets annoyed by their colleagues who ask the mundane question about, wait, do we have the budget for that? Or how soon can we get started? Or whose responsibility is it, right? Or does that complex person surround themselves with people who are real concrete thinkers so that they make sure that those grandiose ideas that they have get turned into practical actions? Right? It takes time to step back and reflect and say, okay, as a complex thinker, I might feel like those concrete thinkers are slowing me down, but what is it that I could do better because they've got my back, right? And we could go through any of these 7 dimensions and think through what is it about somebody, at one extreme or the other that makes collaboration incredibly valuable. We could also think about it, and the report details this too. What are the watch outs, right? So a complex thinker, a watch out for them might be they stay at such a high level that they are talking past other people. It feels vague. It feels fluffy. It feels like their head's in the clouds. Nobody knows what they're talking about. And they think it's brilliant, and they're ideating and they're having fun, but they've lost the people they're speaking to, right? So that's a real risk for a complex thinker. So the report also gives some tips like, slow down and maybe diagram out what you're talking about, so people who are visual learners and really concrete can engage in that way. Right. So one of the tips here for using your collaboration strengths is really to reflect on where they are, use this tool, use other kinds of psychometric tools to really use some science-backed ways to understand your tendencies, and then think about what that means.
Heidi, can I jump in for a second? We had
I think an
interesting question from Carla. So much of networking is defined by being extroverted and putting yourself out there. What advice do you have for the introverts, or even those just working remotely? And it's interesting because, in this model of collaboration, we sort of deconstructed the concept of extrovert, introvert a little bit, right? We talk about people who are more comfortable working individually or in groups at the bottom there, or who are maybe more wary or trusting, or who tend to be very close in their communication style or distant. So do you want to talk about sort of some of those tendencies?
Yeah. I'm so glad somebody asked about the introvert piece because I probably should have talked about this when we had the twins diagram up there. People look at twin two, with that messy spider web, and they assume that he's like the life of the party guy, lampshade on the head, dancing around on table. Nothing could be further from the truth, right? That you do not need to be an extrovert in order to be a brilliant collaborator at work. In fact, the research, if you know Susan Cain's research, she wrote the book called Quiet, and lots of other research shows that people who are introverts are oftentimes, not categorically, but oftentimes better listeners, right? Unlike me, I'm an extrovert. I will like talk, and I'll listen to myself and then infer what my opinion is from what I've heard myself saying. Ivan smiles because he knows how true that is. But people who are introverts, they like to really think about what they're going to say in advance, and they like to think about what other people are saying as well. And it makes them really good listeners and really good team players. And that means that they're able to build these high quality, trusting relationships across the workplace. So, it's absolutely not essential that people be introverts. And and bringing it back to the accelerator tool here, what we're able to demonstrate, and we've tested the data. Trust me, we've crunched the data. There's no one dimension here that's more important for collaboration, and there's no one end of any of these dimensions which is better or worse. It really comes down to people knowing how to take their own kind of authentic characteristics and use them in ways that are natural and that complement the people around them. Before we move on, there are a couple more great questions here. One, Jess has said she or he, I'm not sure, works in executive search. Clients are always asking about tools like this to better understand people's strengths and tendencies. How would we use this tool? Well, I think the first thing I would say is it is not validated as a hiring tool. Kind of our lawyers are making us say that for sure, that this is not meant to assess somebody in terms of should we hire them or not, but it is brilliant to use as an onboarding tool. So in one organization that we work with, they've now had lots and lots of people across different departments and teams and functions use the accelerator. And when somebody joins that new team, they're able to take the accelerator, they're able to share their profile with the group. And then I didn't mention, but part of the magic of this tool as well is that we can roll it up into a team level report. And so we could say, everyone who's on project X right now, let's take your results from the accelerator, anonymously roll them together. And what we'll be able to show is this team collectively has a blind spot when it comes to concrete thinking, right? So that, means that the risk for you as a team is that you're going to love bouncing all these ideas off each other, and you're going to walk out and precisely nothing happens with those ideas because you don't have any concrete thinkers, right? Imagine somebody who's joining that team from the outside, a new hire. They come in and they're able to see that team report. They're able to see kind of how their tendencies either dovetail with the rest of the team or the opposite. And it's going to give them a real leg up in terms of being able to draw on their perhaps unique characteristics to add something to the team. And it's going to help reduce a lot of kind of friction and awkwardness as well.
We're running a little tight on time, but just one other point on that is the importance of rapid and effective onboarding, right? What we've seen from the data is that if new joiners to an organization, particularly experienced hires, but folks straight out of college as well, if they are collaborating effectively within the first 6 months of being within the organization, their likelihood of being within the organization 2 years later is much, much higher. When people come into an organization and they are siloed and isolated and they're not collaborating, the risk of turnover and the loss of all that investment that you made in recruiting and developing this person is out the door.
Absolutely. All right, we got two questions left. Let's quick go through them. Ivan, I'll read yours out, then I will answer one and come back to you for the answer. Christy has asked, I don't want my supervisor to think I'm circumventing them by reaching out to others to generate connections. Any tips for that? Have a think, Ivan. I'll answer this next one, Manuel. Is it desirable to have complementary tendencies? And if so, how do you diminish conflict? Yes, yes, yes. It's absolutely valuable. I would say it's invaluable to have different tendencies. And rather than reducing conflict, I would say two things. One is, how do you use this kind of sort of data-backed solution to understand where the conflict is coming from? Rather than just saying somebody is irritating me, it's like, okay, we're really different on these two dimensions, and that's likely to create some friction. How do we get past it? And then how do you think about the conflict that gets generated and use it most productively? Turn it around and say, if you see something so differently from me, how do we lean into that and create something new out of our different perspectives? That's the last thing I'm going to say. Ivan, over to you. How do you make sure people don't lose their boss's trust when they're going around them?
So it's a really interesting question. A couple of thoughts. One, be open, right? Be open about the fact that you're going to be reaching out within the organization and communicate why, right? We've said collaboration is important. Understanding expertise is important, right? And so I think being open with your boss about what your plans are and why you're doing it is really important. And then if you can, try to co-opt them into the process, right? Get them on board, get them to help create those introductions, break down those barriers, right? Create some of those connections within the organization, help do some of the credentializing for you, maybe in advance, about why you're going to be reaching out and what's in the why that's going to benefit the person that you're going to be reaching out to.